Hello, welcome to Die Rolling. I'm the ever excitable Adam, and you're joining me here in my not normal place, but kind of my current normal place, to talk about Halloween games. So these are games which, earlier on in the year I did a whole video on like the best horror games that I played at that point. So this is kind of similar to that in some regard, but not. Because some of those horror games, I would not say this is definitely something to play on Halloween. Because maybe they're campaigns, maybe they take a little bit longer. I know the Ghost Betwixt is one that I mentioned previously, and that was one which, it's not a game you can play on Halloween. You can play on Halloween, but it's a campaign game, so it takes a while. So I'll go a bit more into detail on this in a little while about all the different things. I've got my notes as always, and we'll start by going through what's currently going on with Die Rollin, things we're currently looking on Kickstarter, things we're currently painting at the moment. What have we been playing? So do you know what? I'm going to kick this off with talking about Kickstarter. So it's very rare I back things. I did back something that basically because I have so many board games. Hello! If you are watching, I cannot see anyone's names who join in. Hello, Gion, thank you. So if you do join, please say hello so I can see who's actually on here, and I can obviously insult you as it needs to be. I was literally talking about Kickstarter games, and I haven't really backed many, basically because the amount of games I have is I don't know, kind of obscene, I guess. I did, however, back a little game about poo, Can't Go, which was by John from Try Me Games. So that's the only thing I've backed recently. Hello, other people who joined the chat. Feel free to say hi so I know who you are, because for some reason I can't see anyone who joins in here. Raise your hand if you're not here. Perfect. Says Laura. That's always good. So what have I backed? Well, I have backed Can't Go, of course. I'm not backed anything else. However, there are some games out there which I would recommend you check out with these, not my eyes, but your own eyes. So first one I wanted to, but two of these are kind of family games, and then one of these is a really heavy, meaty kind of game. So the first kind of family game out there is going to be called Shape Invaders. I say it's going to be called, it is called. Shape Invaders is a fantastic game. It's really fun. It's very simple. You've got your little spaceships, and you've got a mothership, and you've got a couple of shields. And these are like little kind of plastic tokens that you're going to be flicking around the board. And what you've got to do is basically got to get rid of the other person's mothership. Every time they kind of go off the play area, then you lose one of your shields. Once you have no shields left, if you then hit the mothership off the table again or off the playing area, then you win. The amount of fun I've had this game is ridiculous. Shape Invaders is so much fun. I have got a few dexterity games where you are kind of flicking stuff at each other. There is Flick Fleet, which is such a cool game, and it's very much kind of like a strategic game. Whereas this one is just pure fun. I got this out on the table. My kids were playing it with me for hours. It was just so much fun. And what's really fun about it is you kind of line up your shot, you're ready to flick, and most of the time you end up shooting your own units off the board, and it's really fun. So yeah, Shape Invaders is really good. I have not mentioned Horrified M. I will be mentioning Horrified, and I'm gonna kind of draw it out, so you'll have to go before I can talk about it. I'll put it right to the top. Okay. So I'm going through stuff on Kickstarter at the moment, so I've got two more things to talk about. The next one is a game called, I think it's Hot Shot Pickleball, or just Pickleball. Yes, and hello to M from Verbal Diorama. If you would like to listen to a pretty cool podcast about the how movies were made, then highly recommend checking her out. You can find her on Instagram and various other places. Spotify is a good place to find her as well. And lurking in various different corners of the internet. Her favorite movie is The Mummy. If you ever see anything about The Mummy, you'll find her there probably. Wearing the same t-shirt. Amazing. Seal of approval. Yes. Well, John's clearly listened to the podcast there. Okay, so pickleball is pretty simple. You're basically playing a game of pickleball, and you're playing cards to shoot the kind of pickleball over the other side. Oh, and you're also playing as actual pickles and condiments and stuff in there. Pretty fun game, really easy to learn, really easy to teach, and yeah, it's just fun. I think it ends tomorrow. Well worth checking out if you're looking for a fun, quick game. It's pretty cool. The last one I want to talk about is a really heavy kind of campaign game, and I love heavy campaign games, guys, but I never finished them. And my shelves of opportunity are sagging under the weight of my own hubris and all the campaign games I have and will probably never complete. However, saying that, Story of Many is out on GameFound. It looks amazing. I have purposely not found out too much about this because I don't want to buy any more board games. I do, but I can't really. So I'm avoiding anything about that. But if you are looking for a fun narrative cooperative game that will last you for a long time, Story of Many, GameFound. Okay, we'll go on to what I've been painting. What have I been painting? What haven't I been painting, more like? So I've been spending a bit of time painting this and that. I got the Maladum Kickstarter turn up, which is a fantastic dungeon crawling game where dungeon crawlers are my bag. I love them, as people who watch this know. But with Maladum, what's really cool about it is you have 3D terrain in there. So you basically set up all these walls, and then you put your little guys in there, and when you're looting chests, all the actual items you get are actually in the chest. So you have to open up the chest, you have to pull out the little thing, you go, oh, okay. And you look at your dashboard and there's only a certain amount of room you can put in there. So you're like, oh, can I fit this in? Oh, I've got to take this out. It's so fun. Obviously, it looks much better painted. So I spent the time painting up all the Maladum stuff, bar 3 of the characters in there because you don't actually need them to play the game. And I was just like keen to get it on the channel as quickly as possible to get momentum, and also because I really want to play it. So yeah, Maladum, painted all that up. You can see some of the pictures on my Instagram, and I'm going to be doing a lot more posts on my Instagram about the beautiful things that I paint with these fair hands. I've also been painting some unbeautiful things. The Cthulhu Death May Die Fear of the Unknown, which is also season 3 of Cthulhu Death May Die, apparently. Painted most of that at this point. They're beautiful hands. Yeah, painted most of those, and including this huge Elder God thing, which is probably the best thing I've ever painted. It looks chef's kiss. But yes, I'm going to be doing a little thing on the channel. For Halloween this year, I'm going to be playing Cthulhu Death May Die. And if you're an Ultimate Badass, which is what I call my members on here, then you can vote which characters I'll be using for that. And you'll also get to see that before other people. Everyone else can just wait around. You'll get it eventually. What else? So that's everything been painting. Anything else been painting? No, that is pretty much it. And of course, the Temple Guard from Shards of Brimstone, Valley of the Seven Kings, which came up last week. What's the members thing? Well, if you want to hear about my member. So yeah, basically, thank you, John, for the prompt there. So basically, to keep the lights on, I decided I would do a little kind of membership here. So you can subscribe to the channel and you will get the videos as always. Or if you'd like to support me for the same price as it would cost to feed a family in Africa, then you can pay £2 a month and you'll be able to see some exclusive things. So you'll get exclusive videos every month, which no one else will see. You'll get videos before other people. You'll also be included in polls as well. So if there's any kind of like Cthulhu Death May Die, what are we going to do in this, which characters, you will have all the control over that, and you'll get to see me fail before anyone else. Also, Shadows of Brimstone, that's one of the main things I absolutely love about doing on this channel. I love sharing that game. So with Shadows of Brimstone, there will be some really cool exclusive custom levels I'm basically going to make up. I will film them on the channel, and yeah, you'll basically be able to play it yourself and see if you can beat the scenario. But I've got lots of ideas for it, and if there's any ideas that you can think of, then feel free to fire them at me. Without further ado, let us talk about what I've been playing, and then we'll get on to the main topic of interest. So what I've been playing, 2 games of late. Obviously, I have a new little man in the world, so it's very hard to find the time to play games at the moment. Not complaining, just a fact of life, and I love it. So what have I been playing? 2 things. Undaunted 2200 Callisto, fantastic 1v1 game or 2v2 game if you want to play the 2v2 version, but it sounds really weird. You can also play solo. It's sci-fi, you're on moon of Jupiter, and you're either playing the rebellious miners who are basically rebelling, or the handsome, courageous LFA, who are the security people from Earth, which obviously I'm playing, coming in and trying to suppress that rebellion. It's a really fun, clever system. I've never played any Undaunted games before, which are normally World War II settings. So sci-fi, I was really into it, gave it a go, and absolutely love it. We've been filming it with, I've been filming it with Jack, who is a guy who's helping me out with the channel at the moment. So we've got 4 of these videos, 2 are currently up. If you're a Ultimate Badass, which is the name of the members on here, you get to see those before anybody else. Otherwise, you can wait a week and you'll get them. Or 2 weeks in the case of some of them. But yes, we've got 2 videos up at the moment, and I'm in the edit with the other 2 at the moment, and hopefully I can play the rest of them before we run out of content for that. So you can just, sit and watch the whole thing every week. It's really fun. Highly recommend it. And if you're ever in the same location as me and you want to give it a go, let me know beforehand, and I'll bring it along because it's a great game. Speaking of great games, and this is going to kick off our topic. So I was going to start with Horrified, but I'm going to go to Horrified just after this one because a game I played last night with the kids is Betrayal at House on the Hill. So here we are for the main meat and potatoes of this. We're going to be talking about Halloween games that you would like to play at Halloween, or I'd recommend you play at Halloween. This is different to horror games in general because some games like Nemesis, for instance, which is like a horror sci-fi, it's the film Aliens in a board game kind of format. You could play in Halloween, but I don't feel that they are very Halloween-y in kind of nature. It's a horror sci-fi. Other horror games I've got, I'd say, yeah, they're good horror games, but not for Halloween. Halloween for me, it's going to be, an evening. It's going to be thematic. You have some decorations up. Maybe you're in fancy dress. I don't know. I'm not there. You haven't invited me to this, so I'm just assuming here, guys. So without further ado, let's talk about those games. So some of these games will be things you could play with kids or with adults, or maybe there's a role-playing game I've chucked in there as well, just for good measure. And some of them are smaller games, some of the bigger games. So you could play a couple of these games in an evening, perhaps. So we're going to start off with Betrayal at House on the Hill. Betrayal at House on the Hill is a game that's been out for yonks. You are basically playing as characters, friends perhaps, who turn up at this haunted house. And it is a kind of exploration game. You're going around. It starts off, you've got like the ground floor. You've got 3 little kind of rooms all connected. It's the hallway. And there's some stairs up there. Then there's a tile over here, which is the top of the stairs. And there's a tile also on the table, which is the basement, which you don't know how to get to yet. You're going to be going around through the doors of this little kind of mansion. And every time you go through a door, you're going to draw a tile from a stack, and it'll either say upper, basement, or ground. And depending, obviously, if you're on the ground floor, you have to find one with ground on the back. You're going to put it over, and then you're either going to find, an event where you can find a room. So it could be the dining room, the ballroom, the kitchen, and it'll have an event in there, or it'll have an item you can pick up, or maybe it'll have some special kind of rules for that, or it will have an omen in there. I'll get to those in a second. So with the events, you're going to go into like, all these different kind of horror films and horror stories are all very much in this game. So you're going to come across creepy clowns, ghosts, shadows, undead, vampires. So you're going to go through all these events. You're going to find all these kind of spooky things happening there as you're exploring this mansion. And you'll be rolling these dice to try to overcome challenges, picking up weapons, finding things, and finding these omens. Now, the omens, the first half of the game is you going around exploring stuff, tooling yourself up to fight whatever evil is behind everything here. Because you don't know why you're there. You're just there for, you've been brought there under kind of false pretenses, to be fair, because one of you isn't actually a good guy. Spoilers. It's not spoilers. One of you is actually the evil behind everything, and they've drawn you here, but you don't know that until the second part of the game. So first part of the game, you're tooling up, getting all these things. You're going to find these omen cards. So every time you go into a room which has a little crow symbol on, you basically will draw a card from the omen deck, and it will be something like you'll find a little girl who's like a companion to help you out. You'll find like a spear that might help you, maybe a mask, all these different kind of items or characters. And then every time you find one of these things, you're going to roll 6 dice. And the dice in this game aren't regular dice. They don't go 1 to 6. You have a couple of blank sides. You have a 1, a couple of 1s, and maybe 1, 2 on there. So what you'll do is you'll roll 6 dice. And if you ever roll under the amount of omen cards that are currently out on the table between all the players, then the haunt begins, which is the second part. So you can imagine 3 or 4 of these omen cards will come out before the haunt actually begins. So as soon as the haunt begins, what you're going to do is you're going to find out what omen card you have. So if I, for instance, last night when we were playing this game, I had the girl omen card. So I found this little girl. So I was the person who rolled under the amount of omen cards. So I was like, right, okay, I've got the girl, and you look at the table, find girl, find the room I'm in, and it tells you which player at the table is actually the bad guy. So what happens then? That person is given a separate book, which is just called the Traitor's Tome. Gonna get Betrayal at House on the Hill out for sure. Been on the shelf of shame since last year. It is fantastic. Highly recommend it. Very easy to learn. The traitor's turn goes over to the traitor. They are banished out of the room or somewhere where they can kind of study this book on their own and understand the plot from their side and what they have to do to win. So they have different rules set and things like that. So they go off and they kind of study that. And then everyone else at the table, they have another book, which is the Survivor's Guide. And the Survivor's Guide basically tells you some of the information that the traitor has, and maybe some bits they don't know. So you are going to work together to basically, for the second act of the game, try to sabotage this traitor's, plans, whatever it is. So last night we found this little girl, and the plot was that the traitor was very jealous of our relationship with this girl, and had lured us to this house, and had set a bomb somewhere in the house. They'd summoned a phantom to capture the girl. So we first had to find the girl in the basement somewhere, and then this bomb was going off, and depending on the amount of players you have, depends on how soon that bomb goes off. And the only way you can defuse a bomb is by defeating the phantom and then defusing the bomb there. It got to the very last turn, and I had to get a 7 on these dice, and I got 6. And the next round we died, but it was great fun. But every time you play this, it's different, because there was I think there's like 50 different scenarios in this game, depending which room you're in and what item you have. The haunt will trigger and you'll have a different thing. So last night it was a little girl in peril. One time we played where all the non-traitors were turned into mice and the traitor was turned into a cat. And as the mice, we had to find a toy plane and start it up and fly out of the house. Other times there's been vampires in, there's witches, there's been a guy who's basically been wanting to summon Audrey 2 from Little Shop Horrors. So all these vines and stuff going everywhere around the house. It's so much fun. It's great, great to play with the family, great to play with our adults as well. I always highly recommend, if you want to play a campaign of that, there is a game called Betrayal Legacy, which is the best Legacy game I've played. It's so good. Using the same mechanics, same kind of theme and stuff, but more of a narrative over a series of games. However, Betrayal at House on the Hill, if you are looking for a Halloween game to play at Halloween, then Betrayal at House on the Hill is definitely one of the ones I'd recommend. We're going to move on to another kind of lighter game called Horrified. Horrified comes in a couple of different flavors these days. There is the Greek monsters, I believe. There is kind of like elder beings, maybe. I know Cthulhu or something's one of them. And there's also like an American kind of American version, like Urban Legends. That's it. So Mothman and other Mothman-like things, like Bigfoot maybe. I don't know. Anyway, the one I'm going to talk about is the one we have, which is called Horrified, and it's Universal Monsters. So we are talking about the Universal Monsters from old. We got Frankenstein, the Bride of Frankenstein. We got Dracula. We got the Mummy. We've got the creature from the Black Lagoon. We've got the Wolfman, and we have the Invisible Man, if you can find him. So you're going to be playing as one of various different characters who have different abilities depending on who they are. And you've got a certain amount of actions on your turn to try to foil the plots of these monsters. The monsters are going to be coming into town and basically tearing shit up. Depending on which monster you have, they have a different goal. And you can play the game with just against one monster, 2 monsters, or 3 monsters. I don't think you could play a game with all 6 monsters, because it would be too much upkeep and you would probably lose pretty quick. So on your turn, you're going around and you're going to different locations in this little town, and you're trying to pick up different kind of tokens. So there's red, blue, and yellow tokens with different values on them. And these all represent things like, the red ones are like pitchforks or stakes or weapons, I believe. Blue ones might be kind of scientific things or eldritch papers. And yellows are something else, I can't remember. But you're going to be going around to these different locations on the board, picking these tokens up, and then trying to foil the plot. So, plot-wise, Dracula, for instance, has 2 sides, 2 kind of like parts to his thing. The first thing you have to do is you have to go to each corner of the board and destroy his coffins. So you've got to get all these different red tokens, get to that location, and if the red tokens you have on your character are higher than a particular value for the coffin, you smash the coffin. And the coffins are pretty cool because you can flip them over. They go from like just a regular coffin to a smashed coffin, and you put them on the board to say they're smashed. Once you've got all 4 of those gone, then you have to track down Dracula himself and stake him through the heart by just using a combination of tokens you have. So he plays, that's his whole thing, and he's going around the board. All he wants to do is basically, he wants to drink your blood. He'll go around and basically attack various people like yourselves, or the various different NPC kind of characters who live in this town. Every time he does something really bad, like knock one of the hero characters out, or, you know, drain the blood from one of the townsfolk, then the kind of terrophometer, the horrified meter goes up. So at the top of the board, you've got like a doom track. Once it gets to the very top, then you lose, because the town is horrified. I think they say it's terrified in the game, and it kind of doesn't really make much sense. They should have said horrified. I might be wrong. Play this with your 10-year-old, and we smashed it, pun intended, with the train scenario. Then tried with 4 monsters we made and got absolutely destroyed. Yeah, if you play with just a single monster, it's a great way to learn the game, but you have to play this game with 3 or 4 monsters, because it really, there's so much to kind of like juggle. You might be having to focus on one of these characters, like Dracula, for instance, and then the creature from the Black Lagoon, whilst you're focused on that guy, creature from the Black Lagoon is like progressing with what he needs to do. Or you might have the Mummy, who is, the Mummy's quite cool, probably my favourite character in there. And as Em's probably still watching, I'll talk about the Mummy because it's her favourite film. So the Mummy, their whole bag is they're basically trying to get their long lost love, I believe. And if you are the long lost love, you have a little token to state, oh, they're going to be coming after you. They have a little kind of puzzle on there, and you have to go to the library or the museum or somewhere, and you have to spend a certain amount of yellow tokens to give you a certain amount of goes to try to solve this puzzle. And the puzzle is kind of like, wish I'd brought the board up now so I could show you, but it's like various different numbers in a kind of pattern, and you have to move these different, there's always like one area which is empty, and you have to get all the right number tokens onto their particular numbers. And at some points they flip over to be scarab beetles, and then you can't actually move them, and you have to do something else to kind of get rid of them. But yeah, Mummy's great. With the Wolfman, you're trying to find a cure for him, because these aren't just like evil monsters, you know, set to destroy the world. Dracula, obviously, he's a bad dude. The Mummy, you know, he's doing nefarious things. He kind of loves a person, but, you know, it's kind of nefarious. Whereas, you know, the Bride of Frankenstein and Frankenstein, they don't know any better. They're just these kind of creations, and they're trying to, you know, they're going around, they're doing all this, you know, Hulk smash stuff. But your whole bag with those guys, you have to basically show them their humanity. So you have to basically convince them to be good and get them to meet up, and then they fall in love and they all go off happily ever after. The Wolfman, you have to find a cure for him. Was that the Invisible Man? One of them, anyway. You've got to kill somebody. But yeah, all of them play very differently. 6 different monsters. You can play with 1, you can play with 4, you can try all of them. And it's very easy to learn, very easy to play. Plays in about an hour. And Halloween-wise, it's a great choice for a Halloween game, because you can play it with kids, adults, and the undead. So what's not to love about it? There is also a version you can print off yourself, I believe called Terrified, which some beautiful person has basically got Pennywise, Chucky, Jason, Freddy, maybe Michael in there. I'm not sure if Mr. Myers made an appearance, but basically a bunch of different serial killers from the horror movies. And they've done really cool card art for them. And basically you can download this game, you can print off all the components yourself, and you've got yourself a game. You can also get STL files for the actual miniatures for it as well. So someone made an unofficial kind of horror movie version, and all the characters in that are the same. They've got, like, you know, Pennywise, you've got to do a different thing for him than you would have to do with Freddy Krueger. So yeah, if you are a big fan of those kind of things, you should check it out. But yeah, I've got a friend who actually has printed out his own copy. I've yet to play it, but it just looks like it's really fun. And that's one of the nice things about board games these days. People actually go out their way to come up with their own little house rules and things like that, and really improve games, or like do little different kind of re-themes, and it really works. So yeah, Horrified is something I would suggest for anyone to give a go if you're playing a board game at Halloween. Is definitely one to think about. So those first 2 I spoke about, I'd say they're ones which you can definitely play with the kids. They are fun. I'm just crossing these off so I don't go over the same things. They're fun and easy to do. So let's go on from that. So let's talk about probably one of my favorite games, and it is an absolute beautiful gem. For Flying Frog Productions, they do Shadows of Brimstone, which you hear me talk about pretty much every single time I talk about board games on this channel. I'll mention that at least in passing. But the first game they made that I played is a game called A Touch of Evil. In this game, you're going to be playing as kind of investigators in... if you think the movie Sleepy Hollow This is basically the board game of that. You're in this town where all the elders in there are potentially corrupt. And there is some beast, some evil fiend who is preying on the town's elders and the rest of the town. So you, as an investigator, you've turned up and you're basically trying to stop one of these beasts. So the game's called A Touch of Evil. If I didn't mention it, just worried I hadn't actually called it out there. Comes with a really fun soundtrack because Flying Frog Productions always do a little CD you can put in, and yeah, you are going to go around. You're going to explore these different creepy locations to try to find where the beast lives. And in this, you have the headless horseman. You have got a vampire. You have a werewolf, and there's somebody else who I cannot remember. I think a harpy or something like that. It's so thematic. The board itself looks like a map, like a hand-drawn map. There's a couple of expansions you can get for this game as well. What's really nice is the hand-drawn map has a little kind of road off to the right. So when you get the expansion out, you just attach that to where the road goes. And on the expansion, guess what? There's a road on the other side, which you then put up. And you have 3 boards. Big table hog. If I was going to play this at Halloween, I'd get all 3 of these expansions out. Well, the base game, the 2 expansions, I'd be going up against the Headless Horseman, or maybe one of the ones from the expansions, like maybe the Ghost Ship, or maybe the Cultists, and try and stop like an Elder One being summoned. It is such a thematic game. The idea that you are trying to track down the lair for this monster, but at the same time you can't trust the elders, is so interesting, because as you play the game, you can actually uncover these little secret cards which are underneath each of these elders. And some of them are things like, oh, they've had an affair, or, you know, they were blasphemous, or, you know, things which, you know, are bad, but they're not like, you know, in league with evil. But at least one of these elders is definitely in league with the devil. And at the end of the game, well, in the final act, when you find the location of the lair for the beast, you can choose to take, I think, 2 of these elders in there with you. And if you don't know all their secrets, which are currently underneath their cards, you could bring one of them with you, and then you flip them over. Actually, they're in league with the beast, and they end up attacking you as well as whatever you're trying to fight against. And that last battle is really tough, guys, because the beasts themselves are very powerful. Each of them plays very differently, and I love that about this. So the Headless Horseman, for instance, when he activates, he kind of rides through town, and he goes from one location to another location. And if you have one of your investigators who's in that path, they're going to be attacked by the Headless Horseman. The game ends when a certain amount of elders are killed, or you know, you're all killed yourselves, or you manage to defeat the beast. It's such a thematic, beautifully crafted game. When I say thematic, it is a game that you can just, you know, close the curtains, set this thing up, put some candles out, put on a really creepy soundtrack, use the one that comes with it, or do a Spotify mix or YouTube, or whatever you want to do, and just sit there with some friends and play it. We actually filmed one of them on the channel, but Alex and I, it wasn't as good as it normally is because we didn't have a soundtrack on whilst we were playing, and it just really immerses you when you have that. But yeah, Touch of Evil, highly recommend it. It's so much fun. And yeah, I'd say it's kind of, if you think there's Horrified, I'd say Touch of Evil is like a more advanced version of that. And I think that's doing a Touch of Evil a bit of a disservice, really, because I would say Horrified's a very casual game, whereas yeah, Touch of Evil, there's strategy in there. It's very thematic. The different, you go to a different location, you pull out cards, you got events that happen, you got skill tests you have to go past, and also you can play the game completely cooperatively, which is the way I like to play games. Or you can do it competitively. You can be, you know, investigators working against each other to try to find the beast before the other ones do. So it's a nice kind of like, yeah, competitive element to it. So that's A Touch of Evil. Next, I'm going to talk about a game which is a blast from the past for some, but not for me. The game in question is called Damnation, the Gothic game. So I believe this game came out in the 90s, and then a crazy bastard called Chris Reese basically redid it, updated it, and brought out a Kickstarter. It funded, and we actually have a how to play video. I think one of our only how to play videos is on the channel, where I actually go through the rules and get it right, which is very rare for me. Yeah, Damnation, a Gothic game, is fantastic fun. You are basically playing these corrupted characters who wake up in basically Dracula's castle. You are going to be going around the halls, and the whole point is to be the last person standing. You're going around this castle, collecting weapons to try to kill the other people who are with you. And unfortunately, what you don't realize is once you win, well, you're actually in limbo. So it all resets and starts again. Not when you play the game. When you play the game, you've won, and that's it. Yeah. Damnation the Gothic game, one of the fun things about it as well is Dracula's in this castle, and if you get to a room before anyone else, you can actually start playing as the vampire, who's much more powerful than anybody else, and track down people. The other people, whilst the vampires chase them, they can find certain items which will defend them against the vampire. The artwork in this game, I cannot emphasize how beautiful it is. It is absolutely top quality. It's so thematic, it's beautifully crafted, it looks so good. The game itself feels a little dated in some ways because it's a roll to move game, and not many people kind of like that kind of game these days. But the fact you're rolling to move, but you also have a second dice which has events or various things happen on it, kind of adds a lot to it. And one of the really fun things about this game is the power of adjacency. So if you basically manage to get your character to land next to another character, you get to say, and you have to exclaim it out loud, "I claim power of adjacency!" And what this basically means is when they take their next turn, they're going to roll their dice as normal, but you get to choose where they go. And in some games that wouldn't really matter, but this game, there is a staircase that Matt, the offline gamer, chucked me down as quickly as he possibly could. But there is a staircase where you can basically move somebody into there, and then every time they roll the dice, unless it is a 6, they have to move that many spaces down the staircase. This game has player elimination, so players get taken out in this game. Going down the stairs is a very easy way to die. Other rooms you can go into are more dangerous than other rooms. So you can go in a room and basically end up getting killed. There's one card that will kill you with one hit, which to some people would be very frustrating, especially if you're planning on playing the entire game or for the evening. But they are few and far between, those kind of things. And also, every time somebody dies, the game speeds up because you pull out a death knell card, which are these special, beautifully illustrated cards, which change the rules for the game. Also, on your turn, when you're dead, that's not it. You can actually still affect the game in some way. So if you're really annoyed that Matt, the offline gamer, kicked you down the stairs, then you can try and screw with him by doing various different powers from your kind of haunt mode. You will also be using some cards to basically see what abilities you can do. And if you manage to pull 3 particular cards from that deck, then you actually come back on the board. At some point in the game, though, the fall will happen, and then nobody can return to the board. And each round, people are losing hit points until somebody is crowned victor. Damnation the Gothic game, highly recommend it. From Black Leather Games, you can find them on Instagram. You can Google it and find out. I really don't hold a grudge against the offline gamer or anybody else I play with. It's just the last game I played of it was with the offline gamer, and Matt was very, very brutal. But he's a brutal guy. He seems like he's lovely, and then you play a game with him and he chucks you down some stairs. Whereas John will stab you in the back to your face, which is nice. Okay, let's go. Friday the 13th. Great film. And I believe M from Verbal Diorama is going to be doing a actual podcast on this. So if you want to find out how that film was made, check her out. Sorry to backtrack, but looking on BGG for A Touch of Evil, but there's loads and none just called Touch. It's called A Touch of Evil by Flying Frog Productions. I want to say 2013 maybe, something like that. But yeah, if you just go to Flying Frog Productions website, you will find what it's called there. But it is a Touch of Evil. And yeah, it's not a game I'm making up. And I believe I've got the title correct. But yeah, it's great. So we're going to last Friday. This is the Friday 13th kind of board game simulator. One of you is going to be playing Jason, essentially. And the other people are going to be playing counselors. This game is played over several acts. And it's a hidden movement game. So the very first act, you're going to have the killer who has a little kind of like, what would you call that? What is that called, guys? A kind of divider. And there's a little hole in there as well, so you can kind of peer through, which I always enjoy doing. And you're going to be writing down the numbers of which location you're kind of moving around on. A Touch of Evil, the supernatural game from 2008. Thank you, Miss LB. A screen, that would be it. It's because I'm live. I can't think of words. A Touch of Evil Dark Gothic is slightly different. It is a deck builder set in the same kind of thing. But yes, scroll through the comments and you'll see what the actual game is called. Thank you, Laura, for that. So last Friday, as the killer, you were basically in the first act. You were trying to kill everybody. So you're going to be moving your character around secretly and trying to get to the counselors. The counselors, on the other hand, are trying to get into the cabins, and to do that, they have to find the keys to the cabins, which the killer has placed on the board in one of several different locations from the offset. It is so much fun. This game is great. And if you're playing with an experienced kind of killer, it can be... experienced killer is in the board game, not an actual killer who's very experienced at killing people. It's great fun. The first act, like I say, you as counselors are trying to get those keys and get into the cabin as quickly as possible before getting picked off. Anyone who's picked off, don't worry about it. You're not out of the game because you don't have your own really particular color. You can move different colors and stuff. And when you die, you'll be coming back in the next act anyway, as one of the campers who happen to be away or something. So first act is Hunter trying to find killer. Second act, the counselors now know about the killer, so they're going to try and hunt him down during the day. So this time around is a hidden movement game where the killer is essentially trying to move away from the kind of campers. And then the third act, it goes back again where the killer is basically trying to get somebody who's going to be the final girl. And then the very last one is the campers again trying to get the killer. Now, this game isn't for everyone because some people find this game goes on a bit too long. I personally really enjoy the different act structures. All the different counselors have their own different abilities as well. And it's just a very well-made game. It's very fun. You could just play one of the acts on its own, and that's that. Or you could play, you could play several different acts and have a night of it. I would highly recommend have a night of it. But yeah, last Friday, I think it's had 2 editions now, but it's a really fun game. Highly recommend it. 1v many games isn't always for everyone because I find personally they can be a bit unbalanced, except for Sniper Elite, which they've done a fantastic job with that. And Stifling Dark as well is very good. And then a couple of games, but yeah, it's what I like about this one is it doesn't really feel like you're being ganged upon if you're the single kind of killer, or if you are, if the single killer is overpowered, if you're the counselors, because each act you're flipping around about who's chasing who, which I think is pretty cool and unique. So that's last Friday. I'm going to go on to another game which I just mentioned called The Stifling Dark, which is another game I'd highly recommend for Halloween, which is very similar kind of premise, where it is a hidden movement game. You've got locations, 1 or 2 locations, either an amusement park, which like an abandoned amusement park, or a logging camp. There is a terrible natural disaster happening around you. You've only got a certain amount of turns before it reaches your location. And yeah, you've got these 1 of 3 different killers who's basically trying to kill you at these locations. What's really fun about this game is you are moving around your character around the board, and you can't see any, you can't see where the killer is. You can't see, you're trying to find particular bits of evidence to then prove this killer is actually a thing and then getting the hell out of there. Essentially, that's what you're trying to do. But as you move, when you stop, you have the ability to turn on your flashlight. When you turn your flashlight on, your battery goes down slightly, which you can recharge. But you get to choose where to put this acrylic kind of flashlight token, and you place it next to your character facing a particular way, and then you tell the killer, these are the little for different kind of like circles which are currently lit by my kind of flashlight. And I'm saying flashlight just in case. And then if you actually see the killer, or if the killer's on one of those spaces, you place them on the board, or if there's an item or something, you place that on the board. And it's just a really fun game. The mechanic of having this lovely kind of flashlight which actually illuminates spaces is so cool. I played this game several times now, really enjoy it. It's very thematic, and I can imagine playing this on a Halloween evening with some friends would be really immersive, where one of you is playing the killer. I've had some really fun jump scare moments in the game where I basically moved to a position. I thought the killer's over that side of the board. I move position, and then just on a whim, I'll be like, okay, I'm just gonna shine my flashlight this way, and I put it on the board, and then yeah, the killer reveals they're actually standing directly next to me, and it's like, oh shit. Yes, The Stifling Dark, really fun game. Yeah, highly recommend that one as well. So let's talk about Dead by Daylight. Dead by Daylight is a video game franchise. Not a franchise, it's just the one game. Well, actually, no, it's a video game. In the video game, there is one killer and there are 4 survivors. The 4 survivors, their whole bag is they've been trapped in this trial ground, which is one of various different kind of like lovely, horrific locations. And what they're trying to do are they're trying to bring exit by getting the power to these exit gates. To do that, they have to find various generators. They have to then turn these generators on, and then they have to exit through the exit gates. The killer, on the other hand, is basically working for this entity called the Entity, and what they have to do, they have to find one of the find the survivors, and they have to sacrifice them by putting them on hooks. One of the best things about this game is the fact that every single kind of survivor character has a little hole in their back. And I mentioned hooks, right? There's 3D hooks in this game, and you can actually hook the character onto the hook. It's so much fun. It's great. Got to love a game with a good hook. John, that's why I love you. Just here for the puns. Yeah, so it looks great on the board. The deluxe version, which I've got, you actually have 3D generators. You put pegs in the generator. It looks really cool, and it plays really well. The fun thing about this game as well is they put so much thought into it. Each of the characters in the video game have their own special perks, as do the killers. And in this game, the board game version, they've done that a great job with basically translating that. So each of the characters, you've got your own little kind of character sheet, which have got 3 unique perks to them. But if you want to customize, which you can in the video game, there's actually a deck of cards with every single perk that is out in the game, and you basically can just choose which 3 you want for each of your characters. There's a lot of customization in this game you can go into. The killers themselves are so unique and so fun. They each play very differently. You're going to have the gunslinger, who is like an undead, gunslinger from the Wild West. He has got a harpoon gun and can basically shoot characters and drag them onto his space. You've got the nurse, who teleports around the board. You've got the doctor, who drives people insane. There's so many different characters in there. The huntress, who's like a bunny mask like wearing maniac who goes around throwing hatchets at people. The trapper, who puts down traps that you walk into, and then you're caught. You can have this game and play it so many times. It's so different every time you play it. So there's some balancing issues in there with, like, if you're playing with certain combinations of skills and you're kind of new to playing the killer, it can be very daunting to go against experienced survivors, and vice versa, to be fair. But yeah, really enjoyed it. We played it quite a bit. We also played it at Aircon as well this year, which was just really fun. But yeah, Dead by Daylight, you could get this out for a Halloween night, and it's pretty easy to learn, pretty easy to play, and it looks lovely on the tabletop. So you get out for the Halloween, and you've got an evening of taking in turns being the killer and seeing who can survive. There's also a couple of expansions coming out for it. There's like a deluxe version you could get, but now I think they've kind of done a core game, and then there's 2 expansion boxes you can get which have those expanded things in. An upgrade box which has the kind of 3D hooks and the 3D generators. And then there's a new one coming out which has more of the killers and survivors, which weren't included in the base game. I painted all those up, not all the killers, but most of the killers. And you can see some of those on the Instagram if you want to see them. Maybe I'll post them up on the old YouTube posts. Let me know if you'd like to see that, or if you wouldn't. Either way, it's fine. So that's Dead by Daylight. We're now going to go to an older game called Lobotomy. Lobotomy is a really great concept that was poorly executed. The idea is you have a insane asylum, and you are playing as people in this kind of mental health ward. Now, you are convinced that the orderlies are actually monsters, and there's horrible beings that are trying to destroy the world. And only you can stop them as you try to escape this hospital. And what was the great idea, poorly executed, is the idea that you are going around the board and you are killing all these monsters. There's these horrific beings who are trying to kill you. But the really fun thing is, the idea is that actually they're not monsters, that they're just regular people trying to get you back in your bed. And I really love that idea that actually, you know, you think, for instance, like you've got items and stuff you pick up, and you might be like, oh, this is a samurai sword, but in fact, it's just like, I don't know, a pair of scissors or something, or you know, like one of those guillotine things you do to cut up stuff, not French people's heads, but you know what I mean. But yeah, like it's a really lovely idea that you know you're doing this for good, but actually you could be the monster yourself. And they didn't really fully realize that in the actual gameplay itself. There's some interesting ideas in there, but they don't quite kind of like get that in there. But what you do have is a really fun horror themed dungeon. Well, not really dungeon crawl, a kind of cooperative game where you were trying to help each other to stop these monsters. And I say monsters because you have a basic setup of there is this huge warden who looks like the devil, and he's actually holding a patient up, which was really nice to paint because the patient, you can actually see his ass. So I was there painting the patient's ass and the demon's ass, and I was like, what am I doing? What am I doing in my life? But yeah, so he's going around, the miniature looks great, he moves around the board, and he's basically a timer, because if he ever gets to his office, it's game over. So you've got that amount of time to basically defeat him and escape. But there are monsters happening as well. So there's basically a Freddy Krueger monster, there's a Pennywise the clown monster, there's a ring monster in there, and as you start the game, the very first thing happens, a scenario comes out. So let's say the ring girl appears. You have got these kind of like ghosts that are appearing around the board, and you have to find these videotapes and return them to certain locations. So that's your mission. About, I don't know, about 3 or 4 rounds into you doing that, something will trigger another monster appearing. So then Freddy Krueger appears and people start falling asleep, and you have to try to stop yourself falling asleep and do something else to stop him from achieving his goals, whilst also trying to stop the ring girl from coming out on TV and tearing your face off. And then, oh wait, there's Pennywise the clown. Now I've got another scenario to do. So you have multiple scenarios in there. You can make it easier by only having 1 or 2 scenarios in there, but the game plays really well when you've got like, you're trying to balance going against all these different things. Hello Damien, good to see you. I am very well, thank you. So yeah, in Lobotomy, it's a really fun game. They actually did a new one called Lobotomy 2. Very original sequel there, guys. Title there. But yeah, Lobotomy 2, not played. Would really love to play it. The miniatures don't look as good. They don't have as many kind of references to like the films and that it's inspired by, but it still looks pretty cool. And I'd like to play that to see if they've kind of really nailed that. Oh, am I actually stopping all these evil things, or am I actually myself the evil in there? But yeah, Lobotomy, highly recommend it. It's probably the game I spent the most money on when I used to Kickstart stuff. I spent a lot of money on that game. Not as much I'm going to spend on the new Shout to Brimstone Kickstarter, but very close. So that's Lobotomy. We're now going to go to role-playing games, because role-playing games are fantastic, and if you're not playing role-playing games, then get in touch and I'll try and sort a role-playing game one night with you, because they're so much fun. And I would be... I have to talk about this game because, well, I don't have to, but I'd like to. It's a role-playing game called Shiver. You've heard me mention it before on the channel. There's also a video of the Mr. Husk scenario, which I did with the Offline Gamer, where he wasn't pushing me downstairs. In fact, I think he was running down some stairs at some point. I was chasing with a scarecrow monster. But yeah, Shiver is a horror-agnostic role-playing game. If you saw my my waffle about the role-playing games I did a couple of weeks ago, then yeah, this is essentially, I'd already mentioned in there. It's a horror-agnostic one, so it's a setting-agnostic, should I say. So you're basically playing as survivors who, or characters in a horror film, and you're collaboratively telling a horror story. The Mr. Husk scenario is a fantastic kind of introduction to it, and I'm hoping to run that at the Outrider Games in Lichfield at some point. Unfortunately, they asked if I could do it this in October, but unfortunately, I'm just too busy. I can't do it. But maybe start in November. I'll see if I can. I've got a free week, so maybe I'll try and do something then. But yeah, it's a fantastic setting. There's so many actual plays you can watch as well to understand how to play it. But I would recommend, if you would like to play a very thematic game for Halloween, put the board games away. Horror, me saying that, but put the board games away and run a game of Shiver, because there's nothing more immersive than a role-playing game. With role-playing games, you don't have a little figure unless you're one of those people who likes to have little figures and moving around. Not me. I'm theater of the mind kind of guy. But a role-playing game is a much more immersive experience. You're not moving figures around. You're not, you're putting yourself in a situation. Granted, you're playing a character, but you are imagining what that character would do in that situation, and partly what would you do in that situation. It's always a lovely shared kind of collaborative narrative experience whenever you do role-playing games. They're not for everyone, but I'd say Shiver's a very good starting point for anyone who wants to try out a horror game or a role-playing game in general. And what's really nice at the beginning, you can actually set the kind of horror level. So you can say, ask the people at your table, are you familiar? Would you like to do a Scooby-Doo level of horror? Or would you like Texas Chainsaw Massacre level of horror? And, obviously Texas Chainsaw Massacre is more gory, whereas something like The Ring, for instance, is a lot more cerebral and kind of visual kind of horror or psychological horror. So, yeah, you can set these games up however you like. You could easily run these with kids, as you could with adults. Just obviously you have to tweak some of the stuff in there to do so. But yeah, Shiver by Parable Games, fantastic horror game setting just generally, and highly recommend getting that if you would like to play a horror game for Halloween. I was very hopeful that I could get a video of this up for Halloween, but I probably won't get a chance to do that before Halloween at this point. But we will be doing Cthulhu Death May Die, and if you are an Ultimate Badass, then you can vote on which characters we'll be bringing into it. But yeah, Shiver role-playing game. And if you'd love to play a Shiver role-playing game and you're in the local area, give me a shout. Or maybe at AirCon next year, I can bring it along and run a session of that, or UK Games Expo, because I'll be at both of those next year. Touch wood. So next, I've just got 3 left. 3 left, guys. Hang out. I can do this. 4 left. So next one I'm going to talk about is Salem. Salem 1667, I think it is. I can't remember the year. The Facade games do some really fantastic games. Well, Jack, yeah, I'd happily run it. Why not? So yeah, Salem, fantastic game. Is basically a social deduction game. You've got you're playing a different character from Salem. So for the Crucible, for instance, so these are based on real people, and one of you is a witch. Now, during the game, it's played over a series of nights, and in the evening, everyone closes their eyes, and the witch kills somebody. So it has got player elimination in it, but it's very, very thematic, because during the daytime, you are playing you're basically planting evidence on other people. If you think John from Thriving Games is clearly a witch, then you'll be placing these kind of cards in front of him. You'll be doing other cards as well, which will affect the game. But it's just a very thematic game. You are on a literal witch hunt. And what's really fun about these kind of games is John clearly is a witch there. He clearly admits it. Burn the witch! Yeah, what's really cool about these games is it's a lovely shared experience. It's very thematic. And for Halloween, what's better than a witch hunt where you are literally just casting aspersions against people? And what's really fun is if you are the witch yourself and you are like just directing people's attention anywhere but to you. These games are also beautiful as well by Facade Games because they look like books. You might have seen them before. I've got a couple in the collection behind me here. Oh wait, I'm not in my living room. But yeah, they look really lovely. And yeah, it's always a really fantastic game to play. So I would highly recommend Salem. I think it's 1667, but yeah, check that one out by Facade Games. Really fun, and it's one that I'm going to be, when I'm doing my Halloween stuff this year, I'm definitely playing that because it's just a really creepy game, bit spooky, but not too scary. So it's one I can definitely play with the kids and families. So yeah. Right, so let's talk about a film called Night of the Living Dead, one of the best horror films ever made, in my opinion. Doesn't really stand up today for some people, but personally, I think it's fantastic. Great social commentary as well. And yeah, just a very well-made film. Night of the Living Dead, they made a Zombicide game out of this. Zombicide is a game where you are playing as survivors in a zombie apocalypse, and you are basically normally trying to get from A to B and killing as many zombies along the way as possible. Every time you kill a zombie, you start leveling up. When you get to a certain point, you'll get new abilities, but the zombies will come in force at that point. You get more and more zombies appear on the board for the higher level you are. There's loads of different games in the series, like Marvel Zombicide, Sorry, Marvel Zombies. There's an Army of the Dead Zombicide out now, which I'd quite like to check. I quite enjoyed that movie. But the Night of the Living Dead one is very good, and it's also fairly cheap these days to pick up. In the Night of the Living Dead Zombicide, you are in the farmhouse, and you're basically trying to stop yourself from being killed by all the ghouls. And they call them ghouls in this. They don't call them zombies because and correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty certain they don't mention zombies in Night of the Living Dead, but they are called ghouls. But yeah, what's really interesting about it is because Zombicide normally is just pure action. The guys in the movie, they're not really like trained zombie killers or anything. They're just regular people. So the game it kind of represents itself very well. Because you actually have two different modes to your character. You have Romero mode, where they're just regular people, and then Zombicide mode, where you have like a souped up version of them. And I believe you have to, if you pass a weapon to somebody, you get in this souped up version, or something happens, I can't quite remember. But you can check out all the videos for the entire campaign for that on our YouTube channel, because I filmed all of them. 2 levels in there are a bit disappointing because they clearly weren't play tested. We have to travel from one location to another. It's too easy. But yes, I would say it's a campaign game, but you don't have to play the whole campaign. You can just play the Night of the Living Dead level and just stay in that farmhouse and it's just so thematic, a well-crafted game, and just, I would say, a love letter to that film, if I'm honest. And if you enjoy the film and you've seen it before, then you know at some point, things don't go too well to them. But in this game, there is a what-if element to it. Whereas what happens to the film didn't happen at the end, and you see what else the world looks like outside of there. The last level in it is bonkers, is very tough and very fun, and I got through it by the skin of my teeth on the YouTube video. But yeah, it is crazy. The amount of ghouls you have on the board is crazy. But yes, Night of the Living Dead, Zombicide. Get a copy of that, get it to the table for Halloween. It's fantastic, a great idea to give that a go. Okay, so 2 left. Next one I'm going to talk about is one called Psycho Killer. Qu'est-ce que c'est? Fa. That's the only problem in the game. Psycho Killer is a pretty cool card game, but I cannot say Psycho Killer without thinking of that song and having to say it out loud. Psycho Killer is a really, really fun card game. You basically got a deck of cards. You split it into 2 decks. So you shuffle up, put in 2 decks. And the idea is you're in the middle of the forest. There is a killer after you, and you have to get out. There can only be one survivor to the game. Out of the 2 decks, on your turn, you get to do one thing. You can either pick from one of these 2 decks, which is you either going left or going right. So if you think you're running through the forest, and you go right, pick up the card, and the card might be a good thing, it might be a bad thing, you put it into your hand, or you play it. On your turn, you can just play these cards, or you can obviously go in one of the directions, but it is great. You are going to be playing against everyone at the table. It's a completely competitive game. You are trying to trip people up. You are trying to rewind what's happened. It comes in the artwork for the game. It looks like a videotape. It's so beautiful, and all the expansions are little cassette tapes. There's a bunch more expansions coming out very soon. Actually, we've got a couple of them which we'll show on the channel. But yeah, it's so well done. And what happens is basically you've got like 4 or 5 of these Psycho Killer cards in the deck, and once the last one's revealed, you basically add up how many kind of like injuries everyone has, and the person with the least amount of injuries, they manage to escape. So Psycho Killer, fantastic game. I think you pick it up for around £18 these days. And there is a Kickstarter coming in the not too distant future, which will have a bunch of expansions for that. And if you are playing an adult kind of themed Halloween evening, if you're doing one of those, then this is a great game to do. If you have the Bloody Mary expansion, which turns it into a drinking game. I've not been brave enough to do it yet. I know Craig from Getting to Games says the drinking game is fantastic, but I've not tried that yet. But I would quite like to try that at some point. So yeah, maybe sometime I'll do that so we can see how drunk I get, which would be terrible. I'm a lightweight. And finally, the last one I want to talk about. Of course, yes. Well, maybe aircon. If I'm staying at a place, maybe aircon one evening. I would be staying at a place. I'll bring it to aircon. We can do shots. That would be an interesting way to spend the evening. Okay, so the final one I'm going to talk about. Again, this is kind of like a bit of a weird one because it is a campaign game. So normally, when you play this game, you'll be playing over a series of evenings, or or months if you're like me. You've got a board game group that meets occasionally. It's always on the top list of games I love. It's a game called Arkham Horror: The Living Card Game. Arkham Horror is based on all the Cthulhu-y, Lovecraftian stuff without any of the problems, which that person brings. You are playing investigators who are trying to stop the summoning of some evil thing. Now, these things are normally campaigns, like I say. So you are going to start off as one character. You'll be at aircon, baby due a few weeks behind, so then you'll be alone. Hit you up in the evening if you need an extra player. I will definitely do that, Damien. It'd be fantastic to hang out and yeah, drink the night away as you escape from a psycho killer. Great. Well, this is sorting yourself out. Fantastic. John and Laura, you'll see you there as well. And so we've got that many people. We'll get some more in. Yeah, so Arkham Horror, fantastic game, but you normally play it in a campaign. However, you can just play the base game in one evening. It is 3 different scenarios, and it's so much fun and so thematic. You are regular people who are coming across these eldritch horrors, and you're going insane, or you're, die going insane, basically. Normally in these games, you will fail often, and fail hard. But that's part of the love of this. And whenever you're doing a cooperative game, they need to be hard. But the theme of Cthulhu is always very much like you are really up against it. Which is why I'm quite interested to see how Cthulhu Death May Die plays, because rather than, you trying to stop this elder being from being summoned, and then, once it's summoned, that's the end of the world. In Cthulhu Death May Die, you are trying to kind of sabotage the summoning, but you want the thing to be summoned so you can actually kill it. Which is, unheard of. Love to try Arkham Horror LCG again. Didn't quite get it the first time around. Yeah, I'd be more than willing to give a game a review. But it's one of those things. You just have to sit down, have a quiet evening, and play it with one other person. You can play with 2 people. You can play with 4 people, but I'd always say it is a 2 to 3 player game. 4 player game. It can take a while. But yeah, so I'd recommend if you do want to play a game of Arkham Horror, pick up the base game. You can get it's a bit confusing because these days there are revised editions of Arkham Horror, and there's the original Arkham Horror. The original Arkham Horror, the living card game, came out as a base game with the same kind of scenarios in, and then all the expansions came out. They came out over a series of months. So they're called cycles. So there'd be the Dunwich Legacy cycle, and 1 month you'd get the very first kind of mission, which would have all the new investigators, so new characters you can have and new cards you can build your deck with, and then you'd have the first 2 scenarios, and you'd choose which scenario to go down. Then you have to wait a month for the next one to be released. You'd pick that up and then you'd play that one, and this will happen over a series of 8 months until you complete the cycle. Nowadays there are revised editions that come out which basically have all 8 of those things in a campaign box, and all those investigators I mentioned that you got in the initial box will be in a separate box. So you have to choose one of those boxes to get. I would say pick up a copy of the Arkham Horror card game. You could get one secondhand from eBay, no problem, rather than the newer version which has got the ability to field more characters in it. But yeah, pick up that and just play the base game. Or there's several standalone scenarios you can get, like Murder at the Excelsior Hotel or Curse of the Loup-Garou. Really fun little kind of scenarios you can play. But yeah, Arkham Horror, I'd always say give it a go. It's quite fun. It's not for everyone. It can be pretty tricky, difficulty levels, and yeah, you've really had to enjoy the narrative element to it and the flavor text, and really kind of immerse yourself in it. But that's it for games to play for Halloween, guys. There's so many games I could have mentioned because horror is one of my favorite kind of genres, and board game horror is always great. If I could only play one of these on my list this Halloween, what would you choose, you son of a glitch, jack of all trades? What would I choose? A Touch of Evil. If I could choose just the one, it would be A Touch of Evil, because I find it so thematic, and because it's a game and if I can be frank with you, this is the game that got me into modern board games. It's an Ameritrash game, which is a game people don't really like that term because it's kind of, I don't know, it's really simplifying what the game is. But yeah, you're just chucking a ton of dice, doing skill tests, trying to survive stuff and whatever. But yeah, A Touch of Evil with the right crowd, with the right kind of mood and setting, is very thematic, and it's just a fun experience. The fact you've got 4 different villains in the base box, so you've got a lot of playability in there. If I was choosing a game to play on Halloween evening, I would probably get A Touch of Evil out with the Something Evil expansion, which is the first expansion. It gives you 2 boards to play with. You've got a couple of extra elders as well, which you have to deal with. And I would choose the villain to be the Headless Horseman. And it would be a very Sleepy Hollow themed affair. I enjoyed that film, Sleepy Hollow. I'm not like hugely enamored by it, but I enjoyed it. I thought it was quite a cool concept and it was well executed. And I think if I think of a Halloween movie, Sleepy Hollow always comes to mind. I was like, that's a pretty good movie for Halloween. So I'd probably go for A Touch of Evil, very closely followed by me running a game of Shiver. Yeah, that's what I'm gonna say. That's the bottom line because Stone Cold said so. Although I don't know what board game Stone Cold Steve Austin would play. If you know, please let me know in the comments below. But that's it for my roundup. Is there any games that that I didn't mention that you guys would recommend for Halloween? Just in the last throes of our little live stream here. And whilst you're deliberating what horror games you'd like to play for Halloween or you'd recommend for Halloween, I'll quickly once again plug the idea of you guys becoming a member. So we have got a new thing on here. It's something I'm trialing, which is a subscription service where basically you can pay £2 a month to help support the channel and help me bring new games to your eyeballs. Yeah, just support the channel really. So you get exclusive videos no one else is going to see. You're going to get videos before everybody else. And when we have polls, like we're playing Cthulhu Death May Die for Halloween this year, and you will get to vote on which characters I'm going to bring into the fray for it. So we're going to play 2 characters for it, and you'll get to choose. I will be doing a video very shortly, which will be going through each and every single of those characters, all their pros and cons. And then you will also, if you're Ultimate Badass, you get to vote. So otherwise, you just have to enjoy what people have chosen for you. So 2 suggestions there. The first one, Final Girl. I have very strong feelings about Final Girl, and the next one, Mansions of Madness with the app. I'm going to go for Mansions of Madness first. Mansions of Madness is a great game by Fantasy Flight Games. It was one I was tempted to talk about on this, but because I've got so many on the list, I was like, I'm already mentioning Betrayal at House on the Hill, which is similar. But yeah, Mansions of Madness is very fun, very thematic, and you've got an app. And the app has music in there. It kind of tells you where to place things. But if I'm going for a Halloween game, I want something that's immersive. And I always find app-based games take me away from the actual experience I'm having at the table. Especially if I'm not the one using the app. If someone's sitting at the table, they've got an app, I feel like it's kind of, they're not in the room with me. They need to be in the room with me. It is a really fun game though, and yeah, I've played the latest edition, I think a couple of times, and I quite enjoyed the app integration because the second edition or the edition before it didn't have an app, and then they brought an app out, and it was fine. But in the other version, you basically had somebody playing as the bad guys, like the dungeon master, moving everything around and coming up with the story and stuff. Whereas the new one, there isn't one of those keeper characters. You basically, the app is doing everything for you, which is great. But yeah, I think that's a great shout. Mansions of Madness. Just for me, I would prefer to be playing a version where you don't have to use an app for it. Final Girl. Final Girl is a great game to be playing if you are on your own for Halloween. It's a solo game. The only problem is it doesn't gel with me. So I have a bit of a history with Final Girl because a long while ago, this guy decided he's going to come up with a board game. I was alone one evening and I was like, oh, I've got a few games. What do I fancy playing? And I was like, do you know what? I fancy playing like a slasher horror game. And I was like, I don't own one. And I had a quick look on the internet. I found 2 games that came to mind. One which was called Last Friday, which I mentioned in this list, and the other one called Camp Grizzly. Camp Grizzly looked fantastic, but you need it had been on Kickstarter, and then it's a Grail game. It's very hard to get hold of. I think you can print stuff off and make your own version of it, but I'm not a print off kind of guy. So I was like, I'm going to make my own one. Why not? So I came up with a whole thing called Killer at Camp Legacy. I was going to do a whole thing about legacy elements to it. Developed over a serious time, and the idea was you're going to be playing as all the different counselors. So you weren't a character yourself, you were controlling the 8 different counselors on the map, and there was a killer trying to kill them all off, which was controlled purely by the board game. So there was no one versus many element. It was just all together trying to defeat this killer in various different ways. And I've already done a video on this game where I actually play through it, and it does have some pretty cool ideas in there. So I actually got this signed with the publisher. They went bust, and then I went on to content creation rather than board game creation. So here I am now, talking about games rather than designing them. And Final Girl came out, and I was like, oh my god, this is it. This is the game I was trying to make. Someone has made a solo cooperative game where you were trying to, defeat Jason Voorhees or, Michael Myers or Freddy Krueger, whoever. It didn't gel. It just didn't feel as immersive as I thought it would. I guess I'm always comparing against the thing I made, and objectively, I think what I did was better. And I'll fight to the grave to talk about that one, I guess, to kind of to say that. But yeah, I don't know. It just didn't gel with me. I really wanted to like it. I just felt like I didn't really feel like the killer had any kind of like personality. All the campers I was trying to survive were faceless entities. It just didn't gel. I do know though I am in the minority. A lot of people really enjoy Final Girl, and Final Girl for is great because there's so many different kind of sets you can get for it. So it's you versus Freddy Krueger style character, or you versus, if it's the new season, it's you versus Alien. Or The Thing. They've got some really cool different sets that you can play with, and maybe the one I played just wasn't it was too close to what I did, and I thought what I'd done was better. I don't know, just it felt very much like the mechanics were there and it was a game, but it didn't feel thematically. Depends on the map and the killer you think. Some you think are garbage and you didn't like. Well, yeah, and I guess that's it. It's just for me, that, like I say, the mechanics for it felt very detached from the actual theme, and I'm all about theme over mechanics personally. And you're not playing them all either way. Well, the thing is, I'm glad you enjoyed that. And I know that I am in the minority when it comes to Final Girl, because a lot of people absolutely will die on a hill talking about how it's one of the best games. I will not be on a hill. I'll be on the opposite hill, going, "Your game's not as good as my game." Although, I'm not saying that my game is better than that. It's just my personal preference. I invested more into a Friday the 13th scenario than their Friday the 13th scenario, which I understand why, because they were doing various different scenarios rather than just focusing on the one. But yeah, that's it for me, guys. Thanks so much for watching. Please consider becoming an Ultimate Badass. There should be a link somewhere, maybe below. Aircon 2025, play Adam's game. If you want me to bring it to Aircon, I will pack it into my bag, and yeah, you can give it a go. And maybe we can drink shots to that as well. It was a fun game. Yeah, brilliant. No chance of another publisher picking up your game. So here's the thing. So I don't have the capacity to do it. I have 2 games which I designed. One being a really fun competitive game, and the other one being this slasher game I was talking about. I tried a couple of times at UK Games Expo to get into the publisher speed dating thing, to try and get in front of some publishers. I did go through a period of time really trying to do it. And interestingly, I'll talk about that speed, the publisher side of the UK Games Expo. I went one year to a UK Games Expo event where I was hoping to meet other kind of aspiring publishers and designers, and I went to this designer meet, and I felt really kind of like on my own there and isolated. So I went and kind of just went into a group of people and was just, inserting myself into a conversation, and felt really out. Imposter syndrome was ridiculous. I felt like I shouldn't be there, especially as the people who were with me who I was talking to, not with me, the people I'd gone and interrupted, were all designers who had got their games published or were publishing them. I don't really want to name names because I don't feel like I feel like one of them was really critical of what I was talking about because they were like, "Why isn't there an app? Have you got an app for it? Is there an app you can do for this?" And I won't name names because it's just maybe it was more on me how I took it, but I felt really really sad, really down, and basically I made my excuses, left, and then sat in my car and cried for about half an hour, and then drove home and just thought, yeah, maybe this isn't for me. But that's just more my own bag, really, and having imposter syndrome here and there. Will I ever do something with it? Maybe. I've got a version of it on Tabletop Simulator, which I kind of do a bit more on. Self-published, upfront cost around 30k for design, marketing, happy share experience. Damien, maybe I might take you up on that, to be fair. But yeah, I don't know. It's finding the time to do stuff and the investment. And at this point, I'm like, I'd like to polish the design up a little bit, give it to somebody else to do it with, and I'm like, my game's out there. I'm not looking to make a career out of it. But yeah, it'd be nice if my game was people played it and actually enjoyed it. Yeah, do you know what? That's the thing. Like, it's more on me and my own kind of like imposter syndrome than anyone there. Like, I'm sure the people I was talking to are perfectly nice people, and it was just how I approached it. Maybe I was a little overconfident and or I don't know, overexcitable. But it is what it is. So yeah, maybe at some point we'll do it. And it brings it aircon, we can give some fresh trauma. Perfectly. This game's shit. Which is fine. But no, I blind play tested it a few times. People enjoyed it. And overall, it was, I had some fun things in there. I put into the game that, when one of the characters dies, you have to add a card for their corpse into the search deck. So at some point, as you're searching around, you find their corpse, just like in a horror film. And once you got down to like the final character, if you hadn't managed to do whatever you needed to do, then it went into final girl mode, and there was like some additional things that helped out the character who was left. And to kill the bad guy as well, every time somebody died, you added not only a corpse card to the deck, but an end game card to the deck, which would be some way to actually, escape or kill the killer. So trying to start up a car, for instance, trying to use the satellite phone to escape. Or tricking the killer into a place to electrocute him, that kind of thing. But anyway, do you know what, guys? You heard it here first. I'll bring it to Aircon 2025. If anybody would like to give it a go, then you're more than welcome. Maybe I'll do Psycho Killer drinking game beforehand to take the edge off. Anyway, that's it for me. Thank you so much for tuning in, guys. Always appreciate people coming in and shooting the shit with me. This is a bit of a longer episode this time because I've got I haven't got much else to do with my day, to be fair. I'm now going to shoot off into town to pick up some spray paint so that I can start spray painting Chronicles of Drunagor. Get up to Aircon. It was, before I go very quickly, I'll talk about Aircon and UK Games Expo and Essen. Essen I did not go through. John from Try Games, who's on the channel, he did go to it and it looked really fun. I went 1 year and it was just too much queuing for me. It was so big. It was so busy. I didn't go to the channel. I went because I happened to have been in Amsterdam, and the same weekend Essen was on, I managed to convince my partner to get on a train and go to Essen, which was a bizarre experience, to be fair. Some stuff happened, which was very interesting. Ask me when you see me in person about my trip to Aircon, and I'll talk to you about it. I can't really talk about it on here, but there's some bizarre stuff happened. And yeah, Essen was way too busy. Just a big place to sell you stuff, and to play any game, there was like a queue, 10 people deep, and I was like, no, this is just very stressful. UK Games Expo, kind of like Essen in some ways, with trying to sell you stuff, but there's also so much gameplay that happens there. I went this year for the first time in 3 years, and it was so much fun. It was great seeing so many other Instagrammers there, other content creators, and I went with no real plan, which normally is my bag. Next year, I'm 100% going to be coming up with a plan of people to talk to, people to show stuff off, because the main thing is there's a couple of people I really wanted to show off their work to everyone, but I didn't get a chance because I just didn't have time. even though it's the whole, since the Thursday press night. So I need to be a bit more prepared next time. UK Games, though, great fun. Really, really recommend it. So much fun. And finally, Aircon. Aircon for me is now probably my favorite one because it is more about playing games than it is about buying stuff. It's not as, I don't think it's as good for publishers to publishers to go there. I don't think. Well, I don't know if that's true, but I know that some people weren't as happy with the footfall there. Than obviously UK Games is so big. But yeah, it's a great place to go if you want to play games. If you've got like some friends, and all you know is have friends. You got some friends, and you've got a game you really want to play, but you never get to the table when you have your fortnightly or weekly or monthly game nights, or like a really big game like Twilight Imperium, and you want to sit down and play that game to its finish. Then Aircon's fantastic for you. You sit down, table, you play the games you really want to play. You can go solo and you can meet up with other people there. There was a really good chat on, I think, Facebook for solo people for Aircon, which you could just go to, and you could just say, oh, I'm going to be here, who wants to play a game? And obviously for all the Instagrammers, there was an Instagram chat where we were meeting up at certain times and playing particular games. So yeah, highly recommend it. I wasn't sure I'd be at Aircon, but I'm pretty certain I'm going to be at Aircon next year. So yeah, if you want to come along, lost quite a bit of money at Aircon and Harriet as a publisher, hoping for more footfall this year. And our game is now released, which will help. Yeah, that's very true. Unfortunately, you didn't have the games on hand at Aircon, which was a real shame. But yeah, I heard that the previous year. I heard that as well. That there was a few people who weren't as impressed with the footfall there for them particularly. But yeah, hopefully this year, as it gets bigger and bigger, hopefully it'll get some more traction and yeah, it'll be more financially viable there. But yeah. It's like I said, I should be at Aircon, so if you'd like to come and play my game, if you want to play any games with me, then yeah, come along. It's going to be very much I'll be going there, represent Die Rolling, and very much looking forward to hanging out with people. I think a shared Airbnb this year with Matt the Offline Gamer, which will be an experience. And yeah, and then UK Games Expo will definitely be there because it's literally 20 minutes from where I live. So that'll be fantastic. And yes, Laura, Damien, John, I'll see you there for the drinking game of Psycho Killer. Qu'est-ce And until next time, guys, stay safe or die rolling. And this is the awkward bit where my finger goes over the camera.